Nick's Southern Heritage series.
Percy, you've got to manage without the doctor. I'll help you.
Oh, Losey, Miss Scarlet.
What is it?
Losey, we've got to have a doctor. I don't know nothing about birthing babies.
Gone with the Wind, the immortal epic of the Civil War and how the South was ravaged by them Yankees. In short, it's the only accurate depiction to date of what really happened, as it happened. Of course, the book was written by Atlanta native Margaret Mitchell. Even though she was born in 1900, Mitchell was a Southern belle of the old school who was coached in the ways of ladydom by her mother and the women of the town. She was brought on excursions through Atlanta and shown the ruins of the old South after the war, and even knew several survivors of the Southern side. Yes, even today, down here we have not forgotten our brothers and fathers who had shed blood in a cause that they believed in. After all, a true Southerner does not believe that the war is over. It's only halftime. It gives you some perspective knowing people who lost a war. As she got older, she attended Washington Seminary, where she excelled in the literary programs there, and eventually graduated and worked as a journalist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, affectionately dubbed the Constipation by some of its readers. She often wrote about prominent Southern women in a vain attempt to gain fame for feminism. Don't worry, Dollface, she'll get the right to vote eventually. Apparently, she also collected pornography as a hobby. When she was younger, she wrote a couple of short stories that she tried to get published, but ultimately were ignored. The only one that has survived is Lost Lacin, about a young woman courting 3 men at once. She also wrote a short novelette she tried to get published in her adult life called Ropa Campaign. It was deemed too short for book form. Well, she sure showed them! In 1926, she was in a car crash that left her bedridden with a terrible ankle injury. Her husband got tired of lugging books around the house and said, "For God's sakes, Peggy—" Yeah, she went by Peggy, it's a long story. "Can't you write your own book instead of reading thousands of them?" And that's just what she did. Published in 1936, the novel took the nation by storm, quickly becoming a bestseller all over the country. In fact, the last person to read it was a Mr. Clark Gable, but we'll get to him soon. I think they just like saying,
"Hey, the sheriff is on this."
So, what's the book about? Well, it follows the life of a young Southern belle on the eve of the Civil War. Scarlett O'Hara is the epitome of the Old South. Young, beautiful, wanting to marry a beautiful prince of the neighboring plantation. She's absolutely smitten with Ashley Wilkes. Wait, isn't that a girl's name? Though he's promised to someone else, but in the end neither can have him as he sets off to war. Rebelliously, she marries another man and even has his baby, but she doesn't care. She wants that pretty blonde boy. Meanwhile, lurking in the shadows is a man who isn't in awe of Scarlett and who even spits in the faces of Southern chivalry and codes of honor. This man is called Rhett Butler, and he takes a small shine to Miss Scarlett. Oh yeah, and there's a black mammy!
If you don't care what folks says about this family, I do. I has told you and told you that you can always tell a lady but the way that she eat in front of folks like a bird. And I ain't aiming for you to go to Mr. John Wilkins's and eat like a field hand and gobble like a hog.
Fiddle-dee-dee.
The book follows Scarlett through the ravages of the Civil War as she hopes and prays for Ashley to return, all the while being shunned by him and his world. It follows her as she comes of age and learns the cruel ways of the real world and sees the luxurious magnificence of the Old South be swept away with the winds. She of course falls in love with the renegade charm of Rhett Butler and even has his baby, but for all of his decrying of honor and human dignity, he genuinely loves his child. Loves her right to the very end. Of course, the novel ends with the promise of a hope and the notion that tomorrow is another day. So what can I say, really? Well, the book is a masterpiece, both building up the legend of the Old South and tearing it down. It portrays the Confederacy as genuinely believing in their ideals of knighthood and chivalry, willing to die for a cause they believe in. Don't forget, the Civil War was actually fought over states' rights, and the Confederacy believed that the North was trying to take their freedoms away. The brainwashed American sheeple seem to think it's about slaves for some reason. Meanwhile, Rhett Butler does nothing but laugh in their faces and point out all the holes in idealism and how there's always more money to be made as a private contractor. In the middle stands Scarlett, who, as a woman, isn't supposed to care about wars and manly things like that, and couldn't care less that the country's being destroyed. She thinks it's her God-given right as a Southern belle. And who can blame her? The woman was literally raised with slaves who catered to her every whim. That's the ultimate in spoiled rich white girlness. Such an insufferable brat in the first few hundred pages that I wanted to pull out a belt and slap her around a little. And the worst part is, all the boys around her indulge that stupid attitude. This is why I can't get chicks. I don't put them on a high enough pedestal. Oh yeah, this mentality is still very much alive down here. The only reprieve you get is from Rhett Butler, who shamelessly tells her she's a spoiled brat, forcing her to own up to the truth. You tell it how it is, Rhett. He was, of course, my favorite character and the ultimate in sexy rogues. He doesn't want any part in the war, though he risks his life to run blockades and smuggle supplies into the destitute South. Even though he scoffs at them, he's regarded as a hero by the Confederacy and attracts the eyes of many young ladies. Of course, he really wants nothing to do with them, instead opting to hang out at his favorite whorehouse. He is, however, enthralled with Scarlett, the one woman he can't have. He even goes out of his way to save her several times, and finally gets her in the end, again saving her not with bravado, but with the one thing all rich women love: money. However, even his cynical armor is pierced when he has his little girl at the end, and he pours his heart and soul into her. When she dies, it's heartbreaking to see the big man break down in tears and fall into the clutches of insanity. That's not to say I don't like Scarlett. Okay, well, I don't, but it's about her journey from a spoiled child who doesn't have a clue to a mature and wizened woman who learns to appreciate what she has. It's just that with 1,050 pages of tiny, tiny print, her journey needs a kick in the ass. I mean, the woman has 2 kids by 2 different men and couldn't care less. What the hell? I get that one of them is supposed to be retarded, but even so, they just barely register for her. I thought it was like children are seen and not heard, but then she does nothing but fawn over Rhett's little girl. What a bitch. But that's the hero's journey, I guess. I also like Mammy. There's just something about her.
Now don't eat too fast. Ain't no need to having it come right back up again.
Okay, so again, this book comes under controversy for its racism. Shocking. I know. I'm surprised no one says anything about the atrocities they attribute to the North, like burning down houses, stealing food, and raping women, but then claim the South didn't do anything like that. But I guess that's the point. It does nothing but romanticize the Old South and their most hated institution, slavery. Hell, even when they play the movie on TV, they try to censor bits of it, like this scene with the rebel flag. I mean, that's an important scene. It's emblematic of how the Old South is dying off. TV makes me sick. I like how a book like The Godfather or Goodfellas that romanticizes killers and drug dealers is regarded with awe, while a film which does the same thing with slave owners is, at best, brushed aside as a thing of the past. Subtle, guys. Real subtle. Of course, down here in the good old boy South, the story is finally remembered. It's even one of my aunt's favorite books, and she's from up north. So what the hell? I think it's just about more white guilt, man. Thomas Wolfe already pointed out how people can't face up to the truth if it's ugly. But I've already been there and done that, so let's keep on. So, I keep referencing the famous film adaptation, and I suspect you want my comment on it. It's okay. Well, it's pretty good. Actually, it's damn good, and well deserving of having lasted all these years. As wonderful as the film is, though, it can't hold up to the book. Even at 4 freaking hours, it still couldn't capture the broad scope and epic world that Margaret Mitchell built in her pages. Of course, what they managed to put on screen was amazing, with perfect casting, perfect scenery, perfect atmosphere, perfect everything. Every scene falls into place, every line is necessary, everything about the film is a masterpiece. I will say that they cut some of Rhett Butler's attitude and made him out to be less of a renegade, but you can still get the sense of what he's about. He was played perfectly by Clark Gable, who was shafted an Oscar that year. What the hell? Again, Scarlett was, of course, played by the ever-beautiful Vivien Leigh, who did win the Oscar. It was also the first time a black lady won any Oscar in the form of Mammy.
Well, Miss Ellen, she went down to nurse that Emmy Sladley, that white trash, and she took down with it, too.
Really, I fawned over it enough, but there's nothing else to... Holy crap, is that the wall from King Kong? It is! They burned down the wall from King Kong! Those bastards! And there was even a sequel. This is the single biggest piece of sellout whoredom I think I've ever seen. Margaret Mitchell was requested to write a sequel to the book all the way up until she died in 1949, though she thankfully resisted. I guess the book wasn't long enough. Why would you ever want there to be a sequel? I get that the ending wasn't exactly complete, I guess, but it ended right where it needed to. The stories had already been told. It didn't work out between them. I guess you could follow Scarlett to the absolute end of her life. I mean, I guess people figure she would never die. I don't know. Anyway, after years of legal battles in the 1990s, the project finally saw fruition. Scarlett was first realized as a novel by a Miss Alexandra Ripley.
Get away from her, you bitch!
No, not that Ripley, but I can dream. It was later turned into a 6-hour miniseries, which may actually be shorter than the real film, that was a long-delayed sequel that only idiots asked for. I have no idea what it's about, and I don't care. All I know is that Timothy Dalton played Rhett Butler in the film. If there's one person who could succeed the good Mr. Gable, it's James Bond. But I maintain no one could truly succeed him. Well, that about closes my commentary on the world of Southern literature. Yes, there were many, many authors to whom I did not get, but, as we like to say in these proud states, fuck 'em. I hope you enjoyed my dear videos and may even begin to read a book you might not otherwise be drawn to. And do keep in touch. If you object to my usage of the word nigger or my comments upon racism and the nature of slavery, well, frankly, my dears, I don't give a damn.